In this lesson, we're going to take a look at the layers palette. Now there's a lot going on in this palette, and there's a lot of buttons. We're going to stick with a handful of the few basic ones that you're going to want to be aware of, and how essentially this layers palette actually works. All right, for this, we're going to open up a flat image that I've taken in a vertical position, and one of the things that we want to go ahead and do is rotate this image. So we'll go to Image, Image Rotation, 90 degrees clockwise. Okay, and essentially I've got this image of a statue here. Now, what I'd like to do is cut this image out. I'd like to take this and cut this object or the statue out of this image, separating the background from the foreground. Now to do that, we're going to have to utilize the layers. Now we can go to Window, down to Layers. We could hit F7. We could also hit this button right here. It's got like kind of a solid rectangle and then a transparent one. Okay, I'll go ahead and just rip this off, and that way we can leave this open and look at it as we're working. Now, the first thing you're going to notice in this palette is that it has an eyeball and the word background. So if I try to click on this eyeball, nothing happens because this layer is locked as the background layer. Now with the background layer, what's unique about this layer is at the bottom of the stack, so it's going to be completely opaque. So watch what happens. To get rid of this word background in italics, as well as this lock, all we have to do is double click on the word background, and we'll bring up this dialog box which says New Layer. No problem. We'll hit OK. And all of a sudden the lock is gone, the layer is renamed, and now it's bold and not italic, as well as all of these other buttons and sliders became active. Now I can actually come in and turn this layer on and off. Essentially what I'm telling the computer is turn off this layer and show me the background, and in this case we don't have a background, so we're going to see a checkerboard pattern. So let's go ahead and use some of the tools that we've learned about. We're going to use the quick selection tool. Okay, and we'll go ahead and I'll just make this brush a little bit bigger, and I'll just go through and roughly go through and select the statue. Okay, just like so. And remember, if you get anything that's extra that you don't need, you can press Alt and just remove that section. Just like that. And then just add in any parts that you overlooked. Okay, so let's say we have this selection of this statue. Now we want to get this completely on its own layer. Okay, so there's a couple of shortcuts that I can teach you. You could also go up here to Layer and use some of the options that are available to you here, but I want to teach you how to do this via a shortcut. So Control-Shift-J will do something really, really interesting. In that, if I turn off this layer, look what happened. I have a background, and now I have an object. So layer 0 had the statue, and it's no longer there. Layer 1 is where it got moved to. Okay? And I'm going to leave this very rough because we're just experimenting with different things. Now, there's a lot of cool things that you can do now that you've got these items separated. You can actually go into layer 0, adjust colors. We could tweak things. We can adjust opacity up and down. So if we wanted to make this semi-transparent on this, we could. All right? We have a lot of options that we can play with. Now, a couple of items that I want you to be aware of. These options here control how that particular layer works. So if I choose this option, which is Preserve Transparency, you notice the lock shows up. Anytime you have any of these pressed, a lock shows up. And what this means is if I come along here with my paintbrush tool, okay, and I start to paint, notice as I paint back and forth, it does not leave the shape of that object. Okay, so that's one option available to you there. The next one is paint locking, which means now that I bring my paintbrush over, nothing happens. I can't paint on it. The other one is move. So if I come in and I can paint, no problem. Okay, I can paint wherever I want, but when I get my move tool, I cannot move it. It'll tell me, hey, this is locked. No problem. If I press all of these, it's essentially locking it. meaning I can't do anything to that layer. I can't paint on it, I can't draw on it, I can't move it, I can't do anything. So just a few things to be aware of. Let's go ahead and undo out of these. There we go. Now, what kinds of things can you do when you have these items isolated? Well, you could link them. Okay, so if I shift select two layers, I can press the link, and that will link them together. So if I move one layer, it'll move both. Okay, if I want to move one layer, I can just grab my move tool, which is my first tool, and I can just click and drag, and you can see that I can actually cut this statue out of the picture, which is kind of cool. And there's a number of other options that we're going to be playing with here in just a second. Now, what if I wanted two of these statues? Okay, I'll go ahead and turn off the background. I want two of these statues. Well, you can duplicate a layer. The way you duplicate a layer is you select the layer, click and drag it down to this little icon next to the trash can. And when you let go, you will have two copies. So now I can take my move tool and move a second copy, and I get that action. Okay. Let's again, you select the layer, click and drag it down to this icon right here, and you will get a second copy. If you're not happy with that, you can actually click it and drag it to the trash can, and that will delete that layer. Okay. So you're never stuck with anything that you put on a layer. You can always move it around, and if you're not happy, you can just trash it and throw it away. So that's a quick look at layers and how layers work. In the next lesson, we're going to, again, keep working with layers, but this time we're going to talk about masks.